We all know and are very aware that the media plays a role when it comes to terrorism. And here are some ideas or things that we should think about when we are taking on this question of terrorism and its relationship with the media. First of all, we need to understand that the media and terrorism have a two-way relationship. Terrorism is aided by the media. The media can be a tool for terrorism, but vice versa. Most media outlets like to cover terrorism. It is useful and good for the media outlet as well. Media outlets, media platforms, social media, TV, newspapers, magazines, radio, but especially the visual ones, again, television, anything on the internet, social media, is an extremely fertile ground for terrorism to flourish on. This is where they can do their outreach, send out their messages, do their recruitment, and at times do real damage, so conduct real attacks that happen through the media platform. This idea of channeling images and stories and messages by the media is very strong. And what's nice about it, especially nowadays, is that it crosses border. It goes all around the world. Somebody can use a media outlet in, say, the United States, but the message would reach as far as Russia or Japan or places in Africa, etc. And so the media helps terrorism to go internationally. They help them find supporters, send their messages, and tell their story many times in a way that they want to. Now, the images that are produced by a terror attack, especially a successful one, think about the explosion, the damage, the destruction, obviously the people who are hurt, the blood, the sirens, the ambulances, all of that things is great material for breaking news type coverage. You know, those tickers that go along your screen and there's a breaking news and that calls your attention and everybody else's attention. And those images are really, really powerful. The more shocking they are, the better it is in terms of getting more clicks, getting more coverage, getting the media outlets, different media outlets to cover, to take stories from states to national, from one country to the other. If there's a good story behind it, if there are some shocking images, it would go viral, as we say, and be covered everywhere and by everyone. A little bit more about this two-way relationship, right? The exposure through media platforms, again, any media platform, is great, perfect tools for terrorists. They like the messages heard by as many people as possible. They like to try and attract people to their cause, to recruit more activists, but also to recruit some supporters, as people that may not take weapon, but will maybe fund them or just talk about them and further on share their stories or support their stories in different ways. And so media exposure is very important, and almost any media platform that you can think about is useful tool for a terror group. On the other side, the media enjoys very much covering terrorism. As I say, this is fear, strong imagery, shocking pictures. That is good selling points. That is something that people will tune into, and it helps to retain the audiences. Because if we are under a crisis situation, if more attacks are coming or new coverage, a new angle on an attack that happened, that can keep people's attention on. And for a media outlet that at the end of the day most of them are for-profit organizations, that's a great way to attract audience and keep that audience there. Now, this relationship is so powerful that at times terror groups will plan and tailor their attacks to maximize the media exposure. They may even send an early notification to a news outlet to make sure that there are cameras in place, or they will choose a place that's already covered by some media attention. And this idea of trying to produce those very strong images as well is something that terror groups nowadays are very conscious about. It's not enough to kill people. It's great to kill people with a huge blast that is a material for coverage that same day, the next few hours, hopefully the next few days. We have to remember that our attention span, especially when it comes to news media now, is very short. The news cycle is quick. So the more shocking imagery they can produce, the more likely they are to stay in the headlines for longer. Now, obviously, we have actors with agency here. First of all, each country, each place, or most places, have a government in control. And that government can decide to censor the media or not censor the media, right? Censoring the media, meaning that saying that there's no, you shouldn't be covering a terror attack, or even if you got the imagery, you cannot use it, or you cannot use the face or the information about the attacker. There are several levels of possible censorship that a government can put on media coverage. Now, this can limit how far the message resonates. This can limit the media echo that comes with any terror attack. And in that way, that might be a good counterterrorism tool. However, at the same time, it also goes against almost everything that a lot of the governments, the Western governments especially, that will be, their countries will be targeted by terrorism, stand for. Because if you want to promote freedom of speech and freedom of press, and the freedom of ideas, then why are you blocking certain images and certain cover? So that's one decision point that governments have to make, and there is no clear cut one way or another. Another free agent here is the media itself. Media outlets, any one of them, or in consortium together, they can decide to fully cover terror attacks and the message behind it and all the related stories, or they can decide not to cover it at all, or they decide to only report it but not to show all the shocking imagery. Again, there are different ways that a media outlet can decide to self-censor. And the decision here is that a full coverage, of course, means that there will be audience, and the audience will retain. And again, media outlets are motivated by profits, and this is where they need the audience. And they are also motivated by their mission of journalism and free press. And so on that side, they want to cover as much as possible. They want to show all the images. They want to talk to everybody involved and everybody that has anything to say about it. On the side of self-restraint come an ethical question, and maybe not to cover at all, or not to cover everything, or limit the coverage, the amount of time, what is covered, what imagery that they are showing or not showing, would be the ethically right thing to do. But of course, it goes against their business instinct and against their professional ethical instincts as well. The other thing that comes to mind here with the self-restraint is that in the world of saturated media platforms that we have, the internet, and we have news outlets from all over the world, and we have social media, it needs more than one actor acting in self-restraint, we will have to have the media industry making a conscious decision of lower coverage level for terrorism. Now, the media coverage of terror attacks set the public agenda. So a terror attack happened, the media start to cover it, that calls people's attention, that is on people's mind, fear is being spread around, and the issue becomes salient with the public and with voters. And we do know that issue saliency impacts voting behaviors, who goes to vote, who are they voting for, all of those things. So if media coverage elevates terrorism to a higher level on what issues or what topics do a voter care about, then that could become a problem to a government that may or may not have an answer to those terror attacks. And so the media coverage does help set the public agenda and does help spread the fear, and this is what the terror groups are after for. If we are calling people's attention to a specific issue and a specific problem, we are priming fear from that problem. Let me try to explain it a little bit more. The world is dangerous. Every time you go on, you drive your car or you cross the street, there is a risk associated with it. If the media would constantly show you images of horrible traffic accidents, I'm pretty sure many of us would think twice before they go on a car and say, oh, do I really have to drive now or not, right? They are priming the fear. With terrorism, they're doing it very effectively and very consistently too. Media coverage brings the attention up, and that primes the fear, focuses our fear from everything else that can kill us onto that issue. In this case, terrorism. And so if we are so much aware of it, A, we are expecting government action or any kind of action, and B, we don't let go of it, and we do give terror groups a lot more power in that way. Now, because of that, because people are likely to identify with the victims, and because they are likely to turn on to the government and look for help, look for the government to do something, and to do something in the context of terrorism many times mean go revenge, right? Go cut the bad guys, go do something, go kill somebody, make sure that that doesn't happen again. Many times we see a link between high media coverage and the advance of hawkish ideas and hawkish policies in the government that is supposed to address the situation. Now, if a government, say even without even if the public is not organically pushing towards kind of an interventionist or hawkish action, if the government wants to take a hawkish action, they can use the media to drum the beat and increase public support and action. There's small tweaks, small manipulations that government officials can do with the media coverage in order to make sure that there is a lot of support to the interventionist or hawkish policies. At the same time, of course, if the media is involved, there's a lot more scrutiny on what's happening, and any mistake will be highlighted at the same time. The media can also be used by government officials if they want to communicate their intentions or threats back to the terrorist groups, and of course to everybody else that is watching, because as you know, international politics, national security is not happening in a vacuum. Everybody's watching all the time. And so the government could use presidential speeches, other speeches by elected officials, or other figures of authority in order to send a message back to the terror group or to the public or, of course, to anybody else that is watching. Finally, one more thing that we need to think about is that the way that the media cover terrorism, and this is especially in the Western world and the United States since 9/11, 2001, that shapes and reshapes public perception about who is a terrorist, who is not a terrorist, where terrorism coming from, and what we should be afraid of, right? Because if the majority of the coverage is about Islamic-based terrorism, people that come from foreign countries to the United States or England or Spain or the Netherlands or Germany, right? Yeah, those people that come from the Middle East, and that's the image that the public now has. So when we say terrorism, for a lot of people, that's the first perception that comes in. And so to summarize all of that, there is a very strong and tight two-way relationship between terrorism and the media, and it is useful to the terrorist group, to media organization, and also to the governments that are dealing with this situation.